Geek here, welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're continuing the Doctor Who ranking series with Series 9. This is Peter Capaldi's second series as the Doctor and Stephen Moffat's fifth as showrunner. Now if you disagree with this bit, that's fine, but in my opinion, Series 9 is the worst series of Modern Who. Worse than Series 11, only by a little bit, but still weaker in my opinion. Because here's the thing, Series 11, you know, it's boring. Dull villains, no story arc, companions you don't connect with, and a Doctor you can't really click with. It just doesn't elicit a reaction from me, it's just boring and dull. But Series 9 has all the potential in the world to be one of, if not the best series ever. You've got the return of cliffhangers and two-parters. That gives the story much needed breathing space, and the cliffhanger is a staple of Doctor Who. You know, how's the Doctor getting out of this one? Speaking of classic Who, I know this is a bit of a shallow way to judge a series, but it's got a bit of fan service in it, you know, like the classic Daleks, Davros, Zygons, bloody Gallifrey, and I am somebody who does love a bit of fan service. And some of the story ideas and some of the, and not just some of the ideas for the stories, but the way that they're structured and told, it's so interesting, you know, like, On the Lake Before the Flood, it's told backwards. Sleep No More, it's like using the found footage thing. Heaven Sent, you know, repeating the same day over and over. It's so interesting. Here's where it collapses under its weight though. They don't commit. For the most part, a load of those interesting ideas and story structures are just brushed off to the sideline to do something completely different and much less interesting. And it is just so much, it's just so baffling and infuriating. And that's what this series is for me, infuriating. You've also got Clara coming back for the God knows how many times. She was meant to leave at the end of Series 8, then stuck around for the Christmas special, meant to leave then, but stuck around for Series 9, and despite having what seemed like a concrete conclusion to her story, she still managed to come back later on in the series, so that annoys me. And this series also contains my least favourite episode of Doctor Who ever, which we'll get to. But Capaldi is brilliant in the series, like, he's on fire as always. Anyway, let's get to it before I lose my mind. Oh yeah, they introduced these bloody things as well. Sonic sunglasses, Jesus Christ. Number 8. Hell Bent. I've waited a long time to do this. Hellbent, for those of you who don't know, is my least favourite Doctor Who story of all time. And that's because, in my opinion, it's the most disrespectful, insulting, and downright infuriating episode in the show's history. Yes, this is my timeless children, basically. First of all, you've got the Doctor going to Gallifrey, something that had been built up since 2005, and nothing interesting happens there. And to add insult to injury, Rassilon, who is this mythical godlike character in the classic series, is completely diluted to just any other Time Lord and just buggers off the planet because they said so. That is just such a waste of Rassilon. That's not even the worst of it. The Doctor then brings Clara back from the dead, potentially putting all of time and space at risk just to save her. No, the Doctor would not do that for anybody. Clara's death scene in Face to Raven was genuinely emotional, and Heaven Sent was all about the grief that the Doctor felt. No, that's all completely undone, for no reason. Then the Doctor shoots the General in cold blood just to save Clara. No, I don't care how much the Doctor supposedly cares about Clara. He would not do that for anybody. Whether that be Sarah Jane, Rose Tyler, the Brigadier, K-Not. He would not do that for anybody. And it's all for the sake of a PC regeneration. Well, that is just insulting on another level. And then for the rest of the episode, nothing happens. It is literally just people talking. And it tries to use all this fan service stuff like all these Daleks in the cellar. Oh look, it's the original console room. No, it's literally just people talking about what the hybrid may or may not be. Oh, and speaking of the hybrid, that was appallingly done. That's a dreadful story arc, and the resolution makes no sense here. Like, it's the Doctor and Clara. Like, that doesn't make sense. A hybrid is meant to be two things merged into one, not multiple separate things. That doesn't make sense. And at the end of the story, Clara gets her own bloody TARDIS with that terrible CGI diner, which makes the Cybermen from Death in Heaven, the Flying Cybermen, look bloody Oscar worthy. I hate this episode with every fibre of my body. Number 7, Sleep No More. I think a more fitting title will be Sleep Forevermore because of how boring it is. To give it credit where credit's due, Mark Gatiss was trying to do something different with like the found footage stuff, and I do respect that. That's about all I like about the story. The found footage stuff is just nauseating and exhausting to watch. It's overused and it wastes this really interesting format. The characters are completely nothing. Reece Shearsmith is just wasted in this. The Sandmen, the monsters made out of sleep dust in your eye, like bloody hell, it's just stupid. And it's just such a boring watch, which could have been really good. Number 6, The Girl Who Died and the Woman Who Lived. This story as well, I just hate. It has a pretty cool idea of like what it's like to live forever with Maisie Williams' character as Shilda. And by the way, Maisie Williams is really not good in this, I don't think. But they do nothing with it. The first part is just a pantomime, like the villains are just so over the top, so comical. The Doctor talking to babies so seriously, it's just ridiculous. The chicken dance music at the end, like to save the day, it's also just daft. And the second part should just be like a character piece on the Doctor and a shoulder. But then you've got like this random lion person in there and all this unnecessary stuff that just dilutes this interesting idea for a story, and it just doesn't work on any level. The only thing I like about the story is that the robot design's quite cool, that's it. Number 5, The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar. You can check out my episode review for this story if you want to see my full thoughts, but in short, I find part 1 just completely boring and pointless, and part 2 just really misunderstands the Daleks. I just really don't like this story. Number 4, The Zygon Invasion and the Zygon Inversion. Now this isn't a bad story, it's just really average. Now don't get me wrong, the Doctor's anti-war speech at the end is just perfect, it is phenomenal. But you have to look at the story as a whole, and there's just not a lot to it. There are a few good ideas sprinkled throughout the story, and I do like how global the story feels, but it just doesn't really leave much of an impression on me, other than the 10-minute speech at the very end. Number 3, Face the Raven. Now we're getting into the stories that I really like. The idea of a trap street for this setting is a really cool idea. It's a nice enclosed setting, very good world created here, and it feels quite classic series. It's very small scale, I like that. I think Ashilda's actually good in this story, and Clara's death scene. I know I've hated on Clara quite a lot, but her death scene was genuinely impactful. It suited her character, and the Doctor's reaction to it, this is where you get to the fury of this Time Lord here, and it is just a brilliant scene. Just a shame Hellbent had to ruin it all. Number 2, Under the Lake Before the Flood. This story is just brilliant, It's a great setting, an underwater base. It really creates this great atmosphere. It's a classic sort of base under siege story with a sort of more modern, timey-wimey twist to it, and I love it. Some of the characters are really cool, like Apprentice, who's the guy with like the top hat. He's quite a fun character. And there's also a deaf actress in the story who's playing a deaf character, and she's used really well in the story. The ghosts are really creepy, they're like whispering and they're blank eyes. It's really creepy. And the way that the story plays around with time, with Under the Lake taking the place in the fallout of a disaster, and then before the flood, you find out what causes that disaster. And speaking of the time and the paradoxes and stuff, there's a great bit at the beginning of part 2 with Capaldi giving this monologue, breaking the fourth wall, and I love it. It's the one story in Series 9 which uses the 2-part format perfectly, and I love it to bits. Number 1, Heaven Sent. This episode is just a masterpiece in every sense of the word. It's a very dark, mature story, which is, it's very abstract in a way that it tackles grief after the death of Clara. The fact that it's literally just Capaldi speaking to himself for 55 minutes, yet he can still carry the episode remarkably, is a testament to how great of an actor he is. The idea of the Doctor in this castle and the diamond wall, it's so interesting. The veil always coming from him, he's quite creepy. Murray Gold does some of his best music here. The Shepherd's Boy is a fantastic track. The way it's edited with him living the same day over and over, it's a bit like Groundhog Day, the Bill Murray film, and it's just so experimental, it's so Doctor Who-y. The scene where the Doctor's breaking down the wall at the end, it is some of the best Doctor Who you can find, and I wish the series was more like this and not like Hellbent. No. I broke my own rules. I became the hybrid. I've got to go.